Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special edition and special episode of the CISO Corner podcast. I'm Dane Dittamore with DataBank. We're calling this a special episode because in addition to our usual guest, DataBank's CISO, Mark Houpt, we're joined by Kirk Offel, CEO of Overwatch. Welcome, Kirk.
Hey, Dane. Thanks for having me. Mark, good to see you again.
Yeah, Kirk, it's great to see you again. Our similar backgrounds, this is going to be a fun one. I guarantee it. Dane, not to leave you out in any way, Dane. You're in on this too, buddy. But thanks for introducing us here.
Well, we've asked Kirk here today to tell us a bit more about Overwatch's partnership. Kirk, according to Overwatch website, you're dedicated to unleashing emerging technologies by leveraging untapped talent in the veteran community. Can you tell us a little bit more about your organization?
Yeah, 100%. Well, first, again, thanks for having me on, Dane. Thanks for letting me talk to you and Mark. And it's a real pleasure and an honor to be a part of this podcast. DataBank's been an amazing partner of ours. And actually, there's a few podcasts that we're going to be releasing here in a little bit that we recorded last week during DCAC week, where we certainly called out and identified some of the amazing things that DataBank is doing for the veteran community. So my background, if you're looking for me to maybe dovetail that into what we do as a business, former military like Mark, so that makes us shipmates. Now we have to compete and see who has the best sea stories. But we have been in the data center space since 2000 is when I got out of the military, and got to have the opportunity to work for some amazing companies and do some amazing programs. Ultimately, about 3 years ago, a few guys that have worked with me in the past and previous companies, we just kind of one day woke up and said, hey, we think that the data center industry, it doesn't necessarily need another professional services group. We just felt like it needed a better one or one with a better purpose or a better mission. So as you said, our mission as a business that is to help our clients unleash emerging technologies that improve the lives of everyone around the world. And what I meant by that was, we get to play in the cloud space now, but there's emerging technologies such as, AI and AR and VR and autonomous driving vehicles, drone technology, and all the other advancements on, the IoT. We get to be a part of building these massive cathedrals that serve as the home for the cloud. And that is exciting, right? It gives us a purpose. We feel like we're doing something significant again, like when we're in the military. I try to compare it to when I was driving a submarine as a 19, 20-year-old. And that was something that was crazy. I'm driving a $1 billion submarine. Now, how do I find that same level of significance? And I think that we found it in the mission critical industry. But that being said, is no matter how much fun we have, helping our clients build and deliver data center capacity, what we really enjoy doing is backfilling or creating voids that we could backfill with more transition veterans. So what a lot of people don't realize is that less than 0.5% of the US population has ever served in the military. I myself come from a military lineage. I know Mark does too. Every man in my lineage is military. I have a brother in every branch. And we talk about things such as like PTSD, or we talk about providing purpose to veterans. And think about, since the attack of September 11th, we've had maybe 8,000 soldiers, sailors, and airmen that have lost their lives in combat as a result of that incident. But we've lost hundreds of thousands of veterans since then at their own hands, right? We have a lot of veterans that have a hard transition, come out of the military. And when you have 0.5% of the US population serving, you have a fair amount of them staying in and retiring. And at that rate of those that didn't retire, like myself, but those that are retiring, we have between 200 and 2,400 veterans that leave the military every month. And that's a really untapped resource. Right now, we're in this space really good at hiring from the trades or hiring from college, but the unique skill set that the military veteran has to offer, I think, is still untapped. So our mission is to help the industry, but our purpose is to help the veteran community. And we believe that there's a existential threat to the data center industry where the pent up demand for growth is restrained from being able to be fully unleashed because there's simply just not enough talented professionals that could help do the jobs that are necessary in this industry. And I mean, not just the jobs that are available today, but there are lots of jobs that transitioning veterans are going to come into in the next year or two that currently don't even exist to this day. So we have to continue to create a collective and find a glide path to where these people can discover that not only is this a great industry to be a part of and they get to do really amazing things, but this is also something that could give them a new tribe, a new mission, and a new purpose, and allow them to be significant again. And we think that if we do that, we could help reduce the suicide rate, because right now the rate of veteran suicide is ranging between 20 and 22 people a day.
Right.
So it's all about trying to reduce that suicide rate while contributing to the mission critical vertical.
Yeah, there's so much stuff there to unpack, Kirk, and I really do not want to move beyond that without unpacking some of it right now, because, you know, first of all, you mentioned 0.5% of the US population really gets this and understands this. That means there's 99.5% of the population out there that doesn't understand the military, what the training is and has to offer. Their view of it is what happens in the movies and somebody going to boot camp being beat on and then coming out as a stooge. You know, let's talk about you and I mean, I'll speak for myself. Okay. I was a high school kid. I went to one semester of college. I went into the military. Okay. When I went through, besides boot camp, I went through in the Navy, what we call A school, which was a technical training process. And I'm certain you did too. I want you to share your experience on this, because I want people to understand the kind of people that they're getting when they hire veterans. So I went through this technical training school. Now get this. This was 6 months long, 40 plus hours a week that I was in a classroom learning IT, satellite communications, so on and so forth. And not only that, I was 18 years old when I did this. You know, you talked about driving a submarine at 19, 20 years old. How many other jobs in this world besides military would turn the keys over to a 300-foot long underwater submersible vehicle that's run on nuclear power, that has probably, I know we can't talk about it, but certain kind of quote unquote special weapons on board, that they're turning that over to you to drive? Okay. And you know, how many types of jobs out there have that much training? You know, that's more than equivalent to a college educated individual, and then turn over the responsibility and keys to somebody who with that kind of thing. I mean, where else can we find that kind of thing except from U.S. military training, or perhaps allied military training? I mean, tell me, what are your thoughts on that?
No, that's a good challenge. It's a good question. I think I don't think that there is such an environment that exists, but I'll tell you, to that end, like, we are in the mission critical space, right? Where we build data. And what does that mean to those that are just new to the industry? Mission critical was a term that was created arbitrarily years ago, probably by some brokers that were measuring the downtime of these compute environments by, $1 million of lost revenue per second, or death. So if you were the FAA and you were tracking airplanes, that's a system that I think we all agree can never go down. And e-commerce was still emerging when, the genesis of this industry could have started in the late 90s. It's an argument that could be made, but when it really became high is when we as consumers started adopting more technology, and that emerging technology at that time was not only a computer, but it was access to the internet, right? And that was where we created so much data. I think the mission critical environment that you and I come from wasn't measured in downtime and e-commerce. It was measured in mortality. Right. And the training that we went to was extremely intense, and it conditions your brain to think of things with a greater appreciation for attention to detail. And you do get shouldered massive responsibility at a very young age with training that, like you said, could be 6 months long. There's training packages that we did that were much longer than that, and those that were, much faster than that. And like you said, you go to A school and then you go to, multiple C schools, depending on what your rate or role is in the military. But I got the chance to go train with some of the best in the business and get trained by some of the best in the business. And then, like you said, I was on a tube that was at a 26 megawatt reactor that we sunk on purpose,
Mm-hmm.
and then drive it all over the world and make sure that we tried to all come back, right? And you learn a lot, not just from a technical basis, but you learn the hierarchy of working within a team. You learn selflessness. The military does an exceptional job of stripping you down when you join the military and building your back up with a whole new constitution as a person where you're much more selfless in nature. And they do train us on extremely advanced weapons and machinery and technology, but they really teach us how to put the mission and the command first. And that's one of the big things that I like to highlight, right? I mean, there's a lot of practical life experiences that we get in the military at all branches of service, but the thing that you can codify that transcends beyond all branches is the commitment to the team, the mission, and the command. And that's something that's unique. And that's why I think a lot of cultures are lacking in our space. Do you agree?
Right. And what that translates into, what I see it translate into, I'm hoping that you do as well, is it translates into people that are willing to stay later to get the job done rather than clock out when the day's over. It translates into people showing up when they don't feel like getting out of bed in the morning. It translates into people sticking through the hard times when a company is going through the challenges that exist in every company and the growth that happens in every company. They stick through the challenges. They stick through transitions of leadership. See, that's another thing that the military teaches, because you have so many people that are transitioning in and out, what we call rotating or PCSing, permanent change of station. People from the military are used to change. And not only are they used to change inside of an organization, but they're used to change in leadership. They're used to being able to say, okay, my boss left today and there's a new guy come in or a new gal coming in, and I'm going to follow that person anyway and give that person the chance to lead and do so properly. And those are huge advantages that veterans bring to your environment. When you got a veteran there, that they're going to be focused on the mission and they're going to show up day to day, and they're not going to call in and go, yeah, today's not my day, I'm not getting out of bed. That kind of thing doesn't happen with most veterans that are coming out of the service, because they've been trained differently. I mean, is that the same thing you're seeing with your side of things?
Yeah, 100%. So it's like a plug and play offense, right? We're all conditioned to support a system or a program, and there are advantages to leadership that you get in the military because you're getting pressure tested at a leadership role at a very young age, which means that you're more likely to be able to make those mistakes and be coached up. And we only learn from the things we do wrong, not the things we do right in leadership. So they give you an incubator model to do a lot of left seat, right seat is what we call it. And you're familiar with this term, the civilian counterpart we have. They probably have their own terminology for it, but what I'm, to codify it in the simplest of terms, it's, you got to be a co-pilot before you can learn to be a pilot. So the first thing you do when you get to a ship, or at least on a submarine, was you had to begin to learn the job of the person above you while you were beginning to teach the person below you your role. Right. Left seat, right seat. So you're constantly in a state of dynamic, or if, some branches call it kinetic, but it's a dynamic, non-static environment in which you can never really get comfortable. So as a byproduct of that, what you get comfortable doing is you get comfortable being uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's an advantage, I think. Absolutely.
It's a huge advantage that I've seen in the veterans that I hire, the veterans I see around DataBank, even before coming to DataBank. I'm not going to go out there and say that I always give preference to veterans, because everybody needs to have this, especially in our HR litigation type of world, everybody has the same advantage, or same opportunity, I should say. But let me tell you, when I'm interviewing a veteran, even if it's not on their resume, I can tell that person served at some point, some point in their past. I don't care how old they are, because the stuff stays with them their entire career. That mission-minded thought process is huge. So
what is it about that? Because I agree with you. I've always looked at, and first of all, I've always said this, where, we're trying to reduce the suicide rate amongst the veteran community up over. That's our purpose as a business. And to do that, we have to start battling things like anxiety, depression, things that lead to PTSD, and ultimately lead to people making really, sad decisions. My thing is, I can look at and measure and size and weigh out someone fairly quickly, and I can see that they're a veteran based on, it's typically their intensity or their level or their sense of urgency to everything. Because in the military, everything was treated as life and death. Whereas here, it's funny. I've worked at places before where the CEO is like, I'm a little bit upset, or I'm a little bit uncomfortable with your guys' approach. And we'd be like, well, what are we doing wrong? And they're like, well, you're not panicking enough. And I'm like, you can go to that guy right there who's been in 300 firefights, and he's gonna be like, is everyone going home tonight? Is anyone getting shot at today? Then the problem is in relative terms, and we'll be able to fix it. Everything is fixable. But we need those civilians that have a paramilitary type mindset to help us transition. Like I needed a coach to be good in the military, that they call those people chiefs, right? So I had a chief that is, the judge and jury and executioner. And, some days they're the missionary and some days they're the mercenary, right? And thank God for it, the chiefs run the Navy. My thing is, some days I need that from a civilian counterpart. So like those are the ones that are teaching me to be urgent and have the attention to detail and to rotate deliberately and quickly. But as I transition away, most veterans in their first year struggle with that transition because the acclimation phase is challenging if you don't have a civilian who can empathize for you, or if you don't have another veteran there who could coach and guide you, because it could easily be something to where your intensity level comes in and it's not something that would bring you value. In fact, it could be something that's abrasive that has an impact on productivity.
Absolutely. So let me give you a little example from my background, from the intensity perspective. First of all, I'm never going to claim that I was never in any way, shape, or form in combat. So I'm never going to attempt to even claim that. But the urgency and the intensity level is very important for any role in the military. So, as an example, when we're on board ship, we're taught if there's the smallest little bit of a fire, that could be a deadly thing. So, when we're in a data center and we see the same thing, we're going to respond like we were taught to deal with that. And part of the reason the Navy teaches you that, or even the Air Force or others, because the loss of life, the loss of material that could result in not acting urgently, but in the Navy in particular, or other branches, when you're deployed, you're the only one that you're self-sufficient. You're the only one that can deal with that. When you're, 1,000 or 5,000 miles out to sea, it's you fight the fire, right? But when I got out of the military, I would have loved to have had a coach who had been in the military, because I went to work on a help desk situation. And one of the biggest challenges that I had in crossing over from military to civilian was the way that I talked. I was very, even in my language, I was a very direct, very intent, and very urgent in my communication. And everybody kept saying, hey, soften it up a little bit. You're not saying anything that's wrong, but people are taking it wrong because of the tone of your voice. And because of I don't know what the right word is, but just the tone of the voice and the way that you're communicating, right? And frankly, my wife still says that, because it still comes back sometimes in certain types of situations, especially the stressful situations. So having that coach to help you cross over is a significant piece to your success moving forward. And even that person doesn't necessarily have to be in the military, but they have to be sympathetic and empathetic towards your military service and have a little bit of understanding of where you've been and what you come from in order to take you through the business boot camp, if you will. And that is absolutely, one of the biggest things that I had to deal with. I can still go back to my performance evaluations in my first civilian job that says, too military-like, too stoic, too
all the things that you praise in the military are now weaknesses, blind spots as a civilian.
But then on the flip side of it, they were saying nobody better that does documentation, nobody better in a stressful situation, nobody better in this or that type of situation. So having that coach coming across is absolutely important. Even if you're not someone who is in the military, learning from people who have been there, or if you're the coach, or learning from the people that have come across and helping them will help them get through those those periods of inadequacy that lead to the suicides that you're talking about. Because I can tell you that when you have a, again, this is a military thing. When you have a boss that's telling you you're not doing something right, you have two choices. You could either curl up and go back, from a military perspective, either curl up and to hide your tail behind you and curl away, or you're gonna turn around and fight. But really, there's a third response, and that is to learn and to address it. And unfortunately, sometimes people coming out of the military, when they constantly hear you're not in the military anymore, stop acting that way, it's a negative thing, and they need to be built up and said, look, a lot of what you do is wonderful. Here's a couple of things we need to work on for transition period, instead of saying you're wrong.
I agree with everything you just said. Let me add, if I could. I think one of the things that the military does a really great job on, and I learned this as I transitioned, right? I ran into every brick wall you can imagine in my transition, right? Because I was a dig-it, what they call in the Navy. I was a dig-it, meaning like I loved what I was doing. I didn't get out because I didn't like it. I got out because there was other things that I wanted to get accomplished in life. And thank God, one of the things that I took with me when I left the military was the ability to be coached, right? They're not there to be right. They're there to bring people together, and they're orders. They're spiritual leaders that are coming in and figuring out how to disarm and de-escalate conflict and bring it back to where we're all singing from the same sheet of music. We all are here for a reason, and that is to give this customer this product. And this is when they asked us to give it to them, and we don't fail. So we started off by offering what we call traditional owners representation, owners reps, which is construction management, project management, right? So, hey, everything from the PDU up, let's go find someone on a brownfield and a greenfield to do it. And once that program goes away, that person goes away, which is why it's easier to not hire full-time employees for this unless you're going to be scaling and you have a predictable model. But if you're a one-off, then you just hire a subject matter expert to come in for 3, 6, 9, 12 months. The program's done, they're gone. And it pencils out well. But now we found ourselves getting into, downstream of that, and that's the fit outs. The other thing that we discovered was we were growing organically at a rate in which I was paying, Bradley Morris or Orion or Scuttlebutt or countless military recruiters to go find me this talent so I could adopt them and then put them to work. But it just didn't pencil out. And after a while, I said, hey, look, I could just go hire a couple of people to recruit for us specifically. And as a byproduct of that, I hired people that had recruiting backgrounds in the military, and they understand every MOS or NEC, and they understand the differences and the nuances between each branch. And we were able to harvest so many amazing people coming out of the military. Again, 2,000 to 2,400 veterans leaving the military every month. I only need a small fraction of that. So we were able to go out and kind of pick through what we needed. But the problem is we end up needing more. We end up collecting a lot more souls than what we could make a business case to justify hiring. And the only thing we could do was make phone calls to friends in industry and be like, hey, remember that time you said you needed another project manager, project engineer or a project coordinator or whatever. Right. We found someone, we can't hire them. You should talk to this person. And then we found a lot of joy. We were being not only inspired by doing that, we were fulfilled in what we were doing and doing that. And we said, why don't we monetize that? Since there's companies that just do headhunting or just recruiting. For us, it's not the primary line of business we use to generate revenue. So I could go soft on that, reduce the cost of what we asked for, making it more accretive for other people. So if I essentially lower the barriers that the cost prohibitive barriers that make it harder to adopt more veterans, why don't I just reduce that? And then at the same time, what we were finding was we were changing a lot of lives. We were getting calls from these veterans like, hey, look, I don't know where I would have been if I didn't find this job, but this is where I was meant to be. This is my purpose, is to be here. They come in early, they stay late, they volunteer for all the hardest stuff like we were trying to live to, Mark, and they just move the needle. And groups like you, thank God, discovered that and found the value in it for us. Yep. I don't know what Dane, about this, but months ago, we stumbled upon this really unique relationship with DataBank. And on the 78th anniversary of D-Day, which was June 6th of this year, we started a campaign called Anchors of Hope. And Anchors of Hope ran for 97 days and it ended on September 11th, or Patriots Day. And what we were trying to do was create a spark. And that spark was, let's create awareness that there are these amazing people that have tremendous talents and huge hearts that are leaving the military and they just need a new mission, a new purpose, a new home. And DataBank won first place amongst all of the other companies that we signed up that were hiring transitioning veterans. DataBank won first place amongst all of them, and they were awarded a very special award last week at DCAC. There wasn't anybody at DataBank that was there to be able to accept it, so we're going to be mailing it out. But one of the things that you should know is, because of that, we were making donations on behalf of DataBank and the other winners, first, second, and third place. DataBank took first place, and they hired, I want to say, 15 veterans in that window. But first place, we're writing checks to the C4 Foundation, which is the Charles Keating IV Foundation, fallen Navy SEAL. I used to do triathlon with him, tremendous man. His father started a nonprofit called the C4 Foundation, which helps special forces people and their families, go through the transition of combat and eventually becoming a civilian or joining the civilian fleet again. We also are making a check donation to Flanders Field. If you don't know the history on Flanders Field, these people do amazing work. And what they do is they go into the bowels of our country where, these are homeless veterans that are maybe strung out in crack houses and are at the very bottom of their despair. And Flanders Field will not only go into these places and bring them out and then find them homes and get them through rehab and get them cleaned up, but we will partner with them in helping them transition and find entry-level jobs into this space. And we all have to start from somewhere. The other group that we wrote a check to is One More Day, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's every time you hear of someone that says, "Hey, I lost somebody," they always say, "I wish I just had one more day." One more day is to try to give people a resource so that they can make that call before they pull that trigger. And I think those checks combined will be between $20,000-$25,000, and those are on behalf of DataBank and the other winners that we did. So DataBank isn't just hiring veterans, but we're taking proceeds that they gave us, and we're giving that back to these charities that are at the ground level, that are going to be making changes on souls. So congratulations to the DataBank for leading the charge. And it was awesome to see you emerge as a business and to take that leadership role. And I'm humbled to be on this podcast, Dane. Mark, it's always great to talk to you, and I'm humbled for your time. And I hope that you have the opportunity to come visit with us and share sea stories on our podcast as well.
Planning on doing that, and I'm sure there will be many more. And I apologize for not being able to get down there to receive the award, but thank you very much for giving DataBank that award, and more importantly, the financial efforts that you're giving to organizations that can really do a lot to help our veterans and get them into the pipelines that bring them into DataBank and other data centers.
Listen, I don't think there's another data center operator out there right now that's doing as much as DataBank to help the veteran community. So thank you. And I tip my hat to all of you.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Kirk. Well, this concludes episode 13 of the CISO Corner podcast with Mark and Kirk. And as always, stay safe and stay secure.